If we believe the famous anecdote, when Marie Antoinette was informed about the unrest among the people, she allegedly asked why they were rioting. Upon being told that the people had no bread, she is said to have proclaimed, "If they have no bread, let them eat cake." In truth, it was likely not cake, but brioche, small, sweet buns. However, this phrase did not originate with the Queen. It was first recorded by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. According to an old Parisian law, if a baker had no bread available, he was required to sell brioches at the price of bread. Her young husband, however, showed no interest in her, even though she was considered the most beautiful princess in Europe. On the day of their first meeting, he simply wrote in his diary, "May 14th, 1770, met my future wife." Nothing special. The marriage remained unconsummated due to the young Dauphin, and Marie Antoinette remained a virgin. Life passed in a monotonous rhythm, strictly dictated by court etiquette. Even meals were a public affair. Anyone could come watch. Curious onlookers crowded palace corridors to later tell stories of how the king ate his cutlets. In the mornings, the Dauphine drank her chocolate or coffee surrounded by footmen and courtiers. When she wished to bathe, a large copper tub shaped like a boot was brought into her bedroom, filled with hot water, and several ladies-in-waiting stood by to dry her off with towels, as required by protocol. For even the most basic needs, such as using a chamber pot, a court lady assigned to that task had to be summoned. The Dauphine could not touch anything herself. The privilege of handing her an object was jealously guarded and never willingly shared. While her withdrawn husband came to life only during hunts, Marie Antoinette thrived in society. She was showered with compliments and flattery, which she began to take for granted, forgetting how close love can be to hatred. Her mother, Maria Theresa, named her daughters three greatest enemies: an excess of flattery, her own laziness, and a complete lack of focus. Blending into the crowd, the Dauphine strolled through fairs and even entered public dance halls. "This is a true revolution," someone exclaimed at the time. And they were right. It was a court revolution. The awareness that she was boldly defying protocol filled Marie Antoinette with a sense of triumph. By rebelling against etiquette, she constantly tried to forget her royal role, thereby breaking down an invisible wall. Just 2 days later, the 14-year-old girl left Vienna forever, heading to an unfamiliar land to marry a man she had never met. For the handover of Marie Antoinette to the French on neutral ground between France and Germany, a pavilion was built. Entering it as an Austrian archduchess, she exited as the Dauphine of France. Everything from her previous life remained behind. She was dressed entirely in French attire, even stripped of her beloved dog. Then came Versailles and the official wedding ceremony. At the public celebrations, free food and fireworks were offered at the state's expense. But tragedy struck. An explosion of fireworks caused panic among the crowd. In the chaos, people were trampled to death. 139 lives were lost, and hundreds were injured or maimed. Notably, this tragedy resembled that which occurred during the coronation of Nicholas II and Alexandra Fyodorovna. Both stories ended in sorrow. The Dauphine was deeply shaken by the disaster, seeing it as a bad omen. A lady-in-waiting tried to console her, saying many pickpockets who had lined their pockets died that day. "But they died alongside honest people," Marie Antoinette replied. In truth, she was a kind and loving child, used to being adored. She wrote enthusiastically to her mother, "What a wonderful people the French are. They showered me with compliments. I've long felt affection for the French and believe I will find it easy to live among them." Her young husband showed no interest in her, though she was the most beautiful princess in Europe. In his diary on their first meeting, he merely noted, "May 14th, 1770, met my future wife." Nothing more. The marriage remained unconsummated for years due to the Dauphin's issues. Marie Antoinette remained a virgin. Days passed in monotony, governed by strict etiquette. Even meals were public. Anyone could come watch. Visitors crowded the palace corridors just to see the king eat a cutlet or the Dauphine drink her morning chocolate or coffee, always surrounded by servants. When she wanted a bath, a large copper tub shaped like a boot was brought to her room. Several ladies-in-waiting and maids stood around to dry her afterward, in accordance with court protocol. Even relieving herself required ceremony. A designated lady handed her the chamber pot. She could not touch anything herself. Handing her an object was a jealously guarded privilege. As time passed, pleasures and distractions began to fade from Marie Antoinette's life. Her husband showed enthusiasm only while hunting and found social life exhausting. She, on the other hand, thrived in society, basking in compliments and flattery, which she soon began to take for granted, forgetting how thin the line is between love and hatred. Her mother, Maria Theresa, named her daughters 3 main enemies: excessive flattery, laziness, and an unwillingness to focus. At one point, Marie Antoinette mingled with commoners at a fair and even visited a dance hall. "Why, this is a revolution!" exclaimed a contemporary. And indeed, it was a courtly revolution. Knowing she defied protocol filled her with a sense of triumph. In rebelling against etiquette, she tried to shed her royal persona, thus tearing down the invisible wall between her and the people. But in turn, the people began hurling poisoned arrows of slander at her. Another quote associated with her is, "Every respectable woman should have at least one lover." History, however, still cannot determine with certainty whether Marie Antoinette herself ever had a single lover. Another flaw that alienated the courtiers was her mocking nature. She often laughed in people's faces. At first, the crowd adored her. In a letter to her mother, she wrote, "When the Dauphin and I strolled through the Tuileries, we were accompanied by a throng. When we waved farewell, a storm of cheers erupted. It was so easy to win the love of a whole people." The governor of Paris slyly asked the Dauphin if he was jealous. After all, 200,000 Parisians were in love with his wife. In May 1774, Louis XV died of smallpox. The Bourbons were the only royal house in Europe that had not taken precautions against the disease. The king is dead. Long live the king. The young couple realized with horror that they were now king and queen. "God, be merciful, guide us, and protect us," they prayed on their knees. "We are too young to reign." From Louis XV, they inherited a broken treasury, a massive national debt, conflict with the Paris Parliament, and a coffer with only 500,000 francs instead of the expected 25 million. Yet the French people welcomed their new rulers with hope. A pious 20-year-old king and his beautiful 19-year-old queen were expected to bring peace and prosperity, a new golden age. They began by donating the traditional coronation funds to the poor. Louis XV approached governance with zeal, which soon faded. In letters to her mother, Marie Antoinette admitted she was unprepared for her role. "I must confess I am prone to extravagance and too lazy for serious affairs. I want to improve gradually. I refuse to be involved in intrigues and hope to win the king's trust." We remain close friends. Marie Antoinette sought to please her husband, who treated her kindly and said he would support anything that brought her joy. The public often saw their queen, not only at ceremonial meals in Versailles, but also in parks, theaters, and balls. She longed to be adored. Her dresses, shoes, hats, jewelry, and 70 centimeter-high hairstyles set trends overnight. By today's standards, she was a style icon. Courtiers called her the Queen of Fashion. She ordered 300 dresses a year. When she sent her mother a portrait in the latest style, she got it back with a note. "Instead of the French queen I expected, I see a resemblance to an opera singer. There must be a mistake." Alongside her passion for fashion came obsessions with diamonds and gambling. Louis XVI gifted her the Petit Trianon, a small 2-story palace once used by royal mistresses, saying, "Madame, it should now belong to you." She accepted on the condition that the king only visit when invited. From then on, he received formal invitations. His rare visits were brief. He disliked noisy gatherings and went to bed early, while she partied until dawn. The anti-Austrian faction soon spread rumors that the queen roamed Versailles at night in search of lovers while her poor husband slept alone. The more absurd the slander, the more people believed it. The frivolous queen was transformed into an Austrian she-wolf, a depraved schemer sent to ruin the French. While Louis XVI busied himself with crafts, waiting for the people to take up his role, this ominous image cast a shadow on the king himself. Rumors spread that the queen manipulated her husband at will. Disgusting pamphlets circulated widely in France, featuring caricatures of the royal couple. Even in Versailles, vile verses crept in. "Baby queen, you're only 20, yet a trail of horrors follows you. Don't rush, don't trample people." These were ominous warnings of a coming storm, though no one could foresee it. 7 years into their marriage, the royal couple remained childless. To help, Maria Antoinette's elder brother, Emperor Joseph of Austria, arrived. For 6 weeks he dined and walked with the couple in the beautiful Versailles gardens. He scolded his sister, "Damn it, madam, your head is too frivolous to wear a crown." Maria Antoinette brought him to her favorite salon, where cards were being played. Afterward, Joseph declared the court had become a den of vice and warned them, if they didn't stop, revolution would be merciless. His words proved prophetic. One must preserve dignity to the end. With this phrase and her head held high, she faced judgment from the Jacobins. When the mob shouted outside her window, rejoicing at the queen's death sentence, Marie Antoinette calmly told the crowd, "My misfortune will soon be over. Yours is just beginning." In that moment, she proved to be a prophet. But what kind of person was Marie Antoinette, and what life circumstances led her to such a tragic fate? It is said that Joseph persuaded Louis to undergo a minor operation, long suggested by doctors, but feared by the king. Whatever the case, the long-awaited consummation occurred, and the royal physician confirmed it. 7 years after their wedding, the marriage was finally fulfilled, and soon the queen realized she was pregnant. Over the next 8 years, the royal couple had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, though 2 died in childhood from tuberculosis. The bittersweet fate of the remaining 2 will be told later. Meanwhile, governing the country followed a pattern of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. The indecisive Louis XV would embark on new reforms, then retreat under the influence of his courtiers, afraid of his own initiatives. At first, Maria Antoinette took no part in politics, but over time she became a fierce opponent of reform and a supporter of reactionary factions at court. The affair of the diamond necklace seriously damaged her reputation. You can learn more about this case in our video titled "Milady, Who Was She Really?", featuring 2 historical prototypes. After the birth of the Dauphin, the legitimate heir, the attacks on the royal couple intensified. Offensive pamphlets born in aristocratic salons portrayed the queen's friends as experienced in lesbian love, the queen herself as a depraved Ottoman nymphomaniac, the king as a pitiful cuckold, and the Dauphin as a bastard. A popular verse of the time reflected this: "Rumors run wild through palace and hall. The bastard, the cuckold, the merry trio, Louis and all." Malicious tongues even claimed that the queen's 2 youngest children were fathered by Count Axel von Fersen. Maria Antoinette's letters to Fersen were discovered in Sweden only in the mid-19th century. Portions with heavy redactions were published and caused a sensation, radically changing public perception of the seemingly frivolous queen. It had been a love that lasted 20 years. Fersen, of an ancient Swedish noble lineage, was wealthy, well-educated, and refined. Their first meeting was in 1774 at an opera ball. Both were 18 and a half. He didn't know who she was until she removed her mask, and only then did he realize who stood before him. Soon the flirtatious Dauphine would become Queen of France. Fersen was advised to leave Paris immediately. He obeyed and did not return until 4 years later. It seemed no one remembered him. Marie Antoinette, once seen as a frivolous queen, gradually became depicted as the Austrian she-wolf and a debauched seductress sent to ruin France, while Louis XV was mocked for indulging in simple crafts instead of ruling. These defamatory images and pamphlets spread across France, even reaching Versailles, portraying the royal couple as incompetent and scandalous. One such pamphlet mockingly addressed the Queen, "You're only 20 but already trailed by a tale of terrible scandals." These caricatures served as ominous warnings of the storm to come, one no one could foresee. 7 years into their marriage, the couple was still childless. The Emperor of Austria, Joseph, Maria Antoinette's elder brother, visited them and spent 6 weeks at court. He breakfasted and dined with them daily, walked with them in the gardens, and chastised his sister, saying, "Madame, your mind is too frivolous for a crown." He was shocked by her gambling habits and declared the court a den of vice, predicting that unless things changed, revolution would be merciless, a prophecy that proved chillingly accurate. It was said that Joseph persuaded Louis XV them to undergo a small surgical procedure long feared by the king. Shortly after, the long-awaited consummation of the marriage occurred, confirmed by the court physician. The queen soon became pregnant. Over the next 8 years, they had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys, though 2 died young of tuberculosis. I will tell more of the other 2's tragic fates later. Meanwhile, France was governed inconsistently, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Louis XVI hesitated with reforms, often swayed by courtiers. Initially uninvolved in state matters, Marie Antoinette later became a fierce opponent of change, backing the anti-reform faction. The infamous diamond necklace affair severely damaged her reputation. You can learn more about it in our video, Milady. Who was she really? After the birth of the Dauphin, legitimate heir to the throne, attacks on the royal couple intensified. Pamphlets circulated depicting her friends as lesbian libertines, the queen as a depraved Ottoman seductress, and the king as a cuckold. The Dauphin was even rumored to be illegitimate. A popular verse of the time summarized this cruel mockery: "Bastard, cuckold, jolly trio Louis." Gossip linked the paternity of the 2 youngest children to Count Axel von Fersen. Letters from Marie Antoinette to him, discovered in Sweden in the 19th century, created a sensation and reshaped perceptions of her. Their love, lasting 20 years, was likely never consummated but deeply romantic. Fersen, from a noble Swedish family, was cultured and wealthy. They first met at an opera ball in 1774. She wore a mask, and he only realized her identity when she removed it. Their connection was instant. When she became queen, he was advised to leave Paris. He did, and returned 4 years later. One day she saw him again and exclaimed, "Ah, we've known each other so long." Eyewitnesses claimed he had completely won her heart. Tall, handsome, and with gentle eyes, he captivated a queen yearning for feeling. In 1779, realizing he was compromising her, he left for America to join the fight for independence. To his sister, Sophie, he wrote, "I've resolved never to marry. It would be unnatural. The only woman I'd want to belong to, I cannot." Their correspondence reveals deep affection. "I live only to love you. Adoring you is my only comfort." She replied, "My dear and tender friend, I love you madly. I cannot exist a minute without adoring you." During the Revolution, Fersen tried to save the royal family. In June 1791, disguised as a coachman, he drove their carriage through Paris. But respecting the king's wishes, he did not accompany them to the border. The family was caught and returned to Paris. From the Tuileries Palace, Marie Antoinette wrote to the diplomat Count Esterhazy, "Neither countries nor distances can separate hearts. Every day I understand that truth more." She lamented not knowing where Fersen was. On October 16, 1793, when she was guillotined, he was in Brussels trying to rally support. He never stopped mourning her. "Her image consumes my thoughts and will forever haunt me. Every day I feel what I've lost. She was perfection in every way." After her death, Fersen lost interest in life. Though he continued as a diplomat and traveled across Europe, he remained haunted by her memory. In 1810, during the Swedish Revolution, he was torn apart by a furious mob, accused of poisoning the Danish air. Like Marie Antoinette, he became a victim of popular rage. Most of her letters were destroyed, but Fersen preserved a few, along with copies of his own. Their correspondence passed through generations of his family until it was acquired by the French Historical Archives in the late 20th century. But now, back to France. In 1789, on July 14th, revolution erupted in Paris. The people stormed the Bastille, a fortress prison and arms depot. Though Marshal de Broglie urged the king to lead 30,000 troops to Lorraine, Louis missed his final chance to save his family. The people, driven by hunger and soaring food prices, stormed the royal palace of Versailles. Enraged, they forced the royal family to move to Paris, to the Tuileries Palace, where they were placed under house arrest. Absolute monarchy in France was broken, clearing the way for a constitutional one, a system fiercely opposed by Marie Antoinette. Her efforts to push her husband toward decisive action were in vain. After their failed escape attempt with the help of Axel von Fersen, the king sank into apathy. Under heavy guard, the royal family was transferred to the Temple prison, where Louis XVI was separated from his family. Marie Antoinette was born in 1755 in Vienna. She was the 15th child in the royal family of Austria, daughter of Empress Maria Theresa and Francis I of the House of Lorraine. The girl was named Antonia, but in the French fashion, she became known as Antoinette. Some events surrounding her birth were seen by contemporaries as ominous signs. All of Maria Theresa's previous children were born without complications. But during Antoinette's birth, the doctors had to fight for the mother's life. On the very day of her birth, a terrible earthquake struck Portugal, reducing the capital to ruins and killing about 90,000 people in just 6 minutes. The King and Queen of Portugal, who were to be her godparents, could not come to Vienna because of the disaster. They were represented instead by Antoinette's older brother and sister. Troubled by the omens, Maria Theresa consulted a renowned seer, asking whether Antoinette would be happy. He replied, "There are crosses for every shoulder." In 1792, Austria and Prussia declared war on France, intensifying the people's hatred of the Queen, whom they called the Austrian woman. On August 10, 1792, the monarchy was abolished, and France was declared a republic. In December of that same year, a trial began against the former king, now simply Citizen Louis Capet. In January 1793, he was executed by order of the Convention. His last words from the scaffold were, "I am innocent of the crimes of which I am accused. I say this to you from the scaffold. I am ready to appear before God, and I forgive those responsible for my death." 5 months later, the Revolutionary Committee of Public Safety decided to transfer Marie Antoinette from the Temple to a squalid cell in the Conciergerie prison. A gendarme stood guard behind a screen, never leaving her alone for a moment. Her children were taken from her. Her eldest daughter would be 16 by the time she lost both her parents. She alone of the royal family would survive the horrors of the French Revolution. Later, she would be exchanged for French prisoners, held in Austria, marry her cousin, live in Austria, and die childless at the age of 72. Her son and heir, Louis Charles, was placed in the custody of a cobbler, Louis Seaman, and his wife. They treated the boy cruelly, often beating him. Revolutionary authorities forced the child to accuse his mother of incest, claiming she brought him into her bed with her lovers. After his mother's death, he was not allowed to say goodbye. For a time, he remained under the cobbler's care, until he was simply forgotten. Locked in solitary confinement for 6 months, without a clean bed or removal of waste, he became gravely ill. Tuberculosis, already common in the family, worsened, and at the age of 10, the unfortunate child died in the jailer's arms. His final words were, "Do you hear the music? How beautiful it is. among all the lovely voices I hear Mama singing. It was from the conciergerie that Citizeness Capet was taken before the Revolutionary Tribunal to answer for the crimes of Queen Marie Antoinette. One of the charges against her was incest with her 8-year-old son. She contemptuously refused to answer, saying, "If I have not responded, it is because nature itself refuses to respond to such an accusation made against a mother." Other accusations included squandering the national treasury and high treason, the only evidence being defamatory pamphlets. Marie Antoinette listened with dignity. Her lawyer, Chauveau-Lagarde, recalled that the Queen received her sentence calmly, without the slightest trace of fear, indignation, or weakness. The verdict struck her, but descending the steps without a word or gesture, she crossed the courtroom as if she neither saw nor heard anything, though as she passed the crowd, she raised her head proudly. Awaiting execution, she wrote a letter to Elizabeth, the sister of Louis XVI. "I have just been condemned, not to a disgraceful death that is only for criminals, but to join your brother. Innocent as he was, I hope to show the same courage he did at the end. I am calm. My conscience reproaches me with nothing. I regret only that I must leave my poor children. You know I lived only for them." Marie Antoinette was taken to her execution site in an open cart, allowing the enraged crowd to hurl insults and pelt the former queen with rotten vegetables. According to one eyewitness, despite the jolting of the cart, which seemed on the verge of falling apart, the unfortunate Marie Antoinette sat motionless, maintaining a regal bearing. She ascended the scaffold unaided. It is said that as she staggered, she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot, and her final words were, "Pardon me, sir, I did not do it on purpose." When it was over and the executioner raised the severed head of the Queen to show the people, the immense crowd roared, "Long live the Republic!" Her body was buried in an unmarked grave in the Madeleine Cemetery, beside the remains of her husband. In 1815, they were solemnly reinterred in the necropolis of French kings, the Basilica of Saint-Denis, by order of the next monarch, Louis XVIII. Thus ended the earthly journey of the Queen, carefree in happiness and majestic in misfortune. The girl grew up healthy and pretty. Antoinette resembled her mother in appearance, with large gray-blue eyes and thick ash-blonde hair, but inherited neither her determination nor her work ethic. Her greatest charm was her charisma, which was so strong even in childhood that no one could stay angry with her for long. While the Empress focused on arranging dynastic marriages for her elder children, Antoinette's education was largely neglected. Her main academic support was her governess, who often completed assignments for her, including drawing pictures. Reading was not among Antoinette's interests. She preferred to laugh and chat idly. Many years later, as the centuries-old French monarchy began to crumble, Marie Antoinette would deeply regret her lack of education and utter another famous phrase, "To be a queen, one must learn to be one." Maria Theresa decided to strengthen ties with the French Bourbons through Antoinette. In France, King Louis XV had a grandson about the same age as Antoinette, Louis Auguste, the future heir to the French throne. At the time, no one expected him to rule, but due to the deaths of the king's son and older grandsons, he became the sole dauphin. He was regarded as the most cheerless young man in the world, quiet with an unpleasantly high-pitched and nasal voice. The young dauphin detested the loose morals of Versailles and was modest and shy. In contrast, Marie Antoinette was lively and sociable. He loved learning and was well educated, while she disliked studying. They could hardly have been more mismatched. Nevertheless, Empress Maria Theresa persistently pursued the union, and finally, in April 1770, their proxy wedding took place, with the bride's brother, Archduke Ferdinand, standing in for the groom. 2 days after the proxy wedding, the 14-year-old girl left Vienna forever to travel to an unfamiliar country and become the wife of a man she had never met. A ceremonial pavilion was built on neutral territory between France and the Holy Roman Empire to facilitate the official handover of Marie Antoinette to the French side. Upon entering the pavilion as an Austrian archduchess, Marie Antoinette left it as the Dauphine of France. Everything connected to her previous life remained behind. She was redressed entirely in French garments, and even her beloved little dog was taken from her. Then came Versailles, where the official wedding ceremony took place. Public celebrations included free food and fireworks, all funded by the royal treasury. But tragedy struck. A rocket explosion amid the crowds caused a panic, and people stampeded, trampling those who fell. 139 people died, and hundreds more were injured or maimed. Interestingly, this tragedy closely resembled the one that occurred at the coronation of Nicholas II and Alexandra Fyodorovna, and both ended just as tragically. This event deeply shocked the Dauphine, who considered it a bad omen. One court lady attempted to console her, remarking that many swindlers had died, their pockets full of loot. "But they perished alongside honest people," the Dauphine replied. In truth, she was a kind and affectionate child, used to being loved by everyone. In a letter to her mother, Marie Antoinette wrote with delight, "What a wonderful people these French are! They overwhelmed me with compliments. I have long felt sympathy for the French and believe it will be easy to live among them."